Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Wagstaff Careers Coaching, first event in our No Wrong Path series. I'm really pleased to welcome Chris. I'm going to do a formal introduction with Chris in a short moment. But first of all, wanted to introduce what our No Wrong Path series is all about. So a couple of years ago, Wagstaff got involved in the hashtag No Wrong Path, part of the Scottish Chamber of Commerce. And we really loved it because it was a very easy and simple social media campaign where it was hashtag no wrong path, and it showcased people standing with a placard in front of their body with what they wanted to do, they thought they wanted to do when they got their GCSE and their A-level results, so at 16 and 18, on what the reality was. And it was a lovely real life introduction to what you thought your career was going to be and what the reality was. And there were some great examples of people thinking that they wanted to be zookeepers and became accountants, and some really, really interesting stuff. So we start this campaign to showcase over the July and August, the summer months, when people are getting their results. But also I think it's important to showcase as adults that we can change our careers at any point. At this time, it's really important because we've got a lot of graduates leaving and graduating this year in a time of flux. We do not know what's going off with our economy and the jobs market. And I suddenly thought, well, actually, 10 years ago, the graduates were facing a similar challenge because we were in a recession, albeit 10 years ago, slightly coming out of it, but the years between 2008 and 2010 were very, very challenging. So I reached out to my network, and Chris kindly said, that was me. So hence, Chris, thank you so much for joining, and we're going to have a little chat about your career. But would you just like to introduce and say to our audience what you do now?
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate being approached. It's a really good idea, and one that certainly the Chamber, in our case in Lichfield and Tamworth, are more than happy to support. But yeah, so I head up the Chamber in Lichfield and Tamworth, and also Sutton Coldfield, but obviously linked to the Greater Birmingham Chamber across the whole of the city area of Greater Birmingham, covering Sutton, Lichfield, Tamworth, Burton, Solihull, Birmingham, and many areas in between.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this campaign as well sort of nicely links into the future faces as well. It's all about our future generation, isn't it? And the paths that they can create. And I know the Chamber are really passionate about future faces.
Yeah, absolutely. Future Faces is our sort of young professional network of young people, young professionals between the ages of 18 and 35. It's a real sort of project of mine to roll it out, along with the support of Anna and the team at Future Faces within Lichfield and Tamworth and Sutton as well, and really use it as a way to shine a light and to promote young people in across the area and across Birmingham as a whole.
Brilliant. So let's go back 10 years. Where were you? 10, 12 years. Where were you, and what challenges were you facing?
Yeah, so I suppose my story is probably similar, and I'm sure that's why I was so happy to get involved in this campaign. Is I'm sure similar to a lot of people at the moment. So I graduated from Chester University in journalism in September 2007. And sort of moved back down home to Cannock sort of around that time in the autumn, and wanted to be a journalist. And obviously, having done my course and done some work experience when I was in Chester was a real sort of passion of mine. And yeah, 2 of the 3 local newspapers closed down that year. So
you were right at the start of the recession, weren't you?
Yeah,
so you
exactly.
Sort of graduated, and it literally, that was it.
Yeah. So it was a real sort of uncertain time. I suppose looking back, it didn't necessarily register to a degree, but you realise looking back, and knowing the figures and the stats and all the rest of it, how tough a time that would have been for a lot of people. And it meant that my sort of dream of being an on the beat sort of journalist in Cannock or in wherever else it may be was still an option, but obviously was difficult in a difficult time. So it meant changing my I suppose aspirations or my thoughts around working and getting a job and starting off in my career, and that was the sort of the current situation around, say, 2008 onwards, really.
Can you remember how it physically felt when you sort of finished university? You'd got a very clear picture of what you wanted to do, and then the realization that, well, maybe this isn't now going to happen for me.
Yeah, it was funny. I suppose you have interviews and you had some opportunities, and you needed a bit of luck. And I suppose I didn't quite get that luck necessarily. But you look back and the interviews I had at publications, no longer exist. So you think that you never know what would have happened if I had got through that. So it was really there's perhaps a misconception to a degree that that you come out of university, you're not work ready. I absolutely was, because I wanted to earn money. I wanted to move in with my girlfriend, who's now my wife, and get a house and start the property ladder and all the rest of it. And that starts with getting a job, doesn't it? And getting earning money and it was you started to look at other opportunities and other areas, and I looked at recruitment and I'd worked in agency roles, in packing boxes and.
Oh, did you?
All manner. So
you did that while you were at Chester?
Yeah, and before and during the summer, and then I came out of university and thought, right, I'm going to start working, and did some work in a medical records facility in Rugeley, which I think has now moved as well, I think, for the NHS. And again, but just got out there and started to work, and then the role at Best Connection in Cannock. And industrial recruitment sort of came up. I went and met the guys there, and you sort of thought, the key thing was that they were offering training, and they were offering a training course around sales and around, they were really sort of passionate about that, and they're a 60-odd branch recruitment firm, so they had a real training in place. So that was something that you thought, well, let's get onto it and go through that process, and it's really sort of, I always look back to Lee Bennett, who was my branch manager at the time, and I've kept in touch with him. He's a big Birmingham City fan like myself, and we still see each other at the games from time to time.
We can't hold that against you on this
call. No. Well, yeah, less said about that, the better. But, let's move aside, on. I think, I know you said when we were talking before about having those mentors and having those sort of connections with people who, you saw as a mentor, but they were really just doing their job in terms of that training. But that was really important and a really strong sort of base, really, for my future career.
That is a really a key point, isn't it? Because, like you say, as we were chatting earlier, that we've both had mentors, but 10 years ago they weren't classed as mentors. No. However, that was their role. So how long did you stay with Best Connection?
Yeah, so I went through a sort of an intense, I think it was 3-week training course in Hales Owen, their sort of head office, and it was all around sales and the whole sort of sales process. So, and I was there for 3.5 years. And working in some, working with some really good people and some really, passionate people about what they wanted to do, and also being introduced very early to what was a very tough industry at the time. I mean, funnily enough, obviously with the recession, recruitment and temporary recruitment was really quite booming, I suppose, in terms of businesses taking on temporary staff rather than full-time staff. And a lot of the work was industrial based, so it was in various businesses in Burntwood and Cannock and Hensford, and I still drive past them today and remember sort of spending early hours of 6 o'clock shifts and 10 o'clock shifts at night and all those sort of things. But it really gave a really solid grounding to my sort of career, but not in the area that I initially thought it would be. But when you look back, to be given good training at 21, 22, and having that support is so important. And that's probably one of my big sort of tips to graduates now is even if it's not a career you necessarily want to go into, if there's a training aspect to that and that support in place, it's a really good opportunity to take and to work harder and.
What do you think the transferable skills were that you took from you considering doing, your journalism work into
I suppose
recruitment?
it gave me that connection and that knowledge of sales, and you know, a really, you know, cutthroat sort of environment in terms of numbers of temporary workers going from 50 one day to 10 the next to 100 the day after. I'm sure you've come across that in your time in many years in recruitment, and it was tough, and you had to be up early, and you had to, people relied on you to get people to work in their factories or work in their industries, whatever that would be, and you know, the people skills of being on the phone, you know, literally 100 times a day answering. I always joke, it was always, I'd finish work and, you know, my wife or my mate would ring and I'd answer the phone, hello, best connection, like I was still at work because I'd answered it so many times. But, you know, looking back, you really see that was really important. Yeah. So it was it's a good grounding in sales, a good grounding in you know, being reliable and working hard, and you know, it's a bit sort of you know, that's what everybody says, but I can't stress enough of how that really sort of grounded me as a person in my job.
I think also it's key to highlight what you've just said there about the markets. There'll be people watching this at the moment who are, it's a very different recession we're in at the moment, and you know, we are, just from a date point of view with people watching it, we're 15th of July 2020, and the numbers of unemployment will be rising. So we will officially be in a recession, but it's a very different recession to the recession of 2008 to 2010. You saw signs of it in 2007, so it gradually came up and then it hit with a bang. Whereas with what we're experiencing now, because it's been COVID, it hit with a bang straight off, and it's the worst, you know, the sharp fall that we've all seen. But you picked up on something there which I think is very relevant to this year as well, which is employers will still be looking to recruit, but probably on a temporary basis. So the temporary markets will be more buoyant than perm, because there will be employers that are a little cautious, not sure what's going to happen with their markets, but would like to take people on a temporary basis to see whether the market will carry on growing. And these situations are only temporary. You know, we are in a temporary situation. Now, that could be a temporary situation for 12 months. It could be a temporary situation for 2 years. It is only temporary. This won't be forever. But taking those opportunities and looking at those sectors, even if it is just on a temporary basis, because I'm sure within your time within recruitment, certainly within my time within engineering recruitment and, you know, operational recruitment, even HR, you know, finance, whatever it may be, people will look to take somebody on an interim, but there's a high chance that could turn permanent, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's always an opportunity there, and I think that was what, you know, you've got to take the opportunities that you get and then work as hard as you possibly can to get there, and that worked, and working with people who are experienced in that industry certainly helped. And I think the other thing that I wanted to sort of raise as well, and it's something I've always said to people, and I'll say it to my daughters as they grow up as well, is you know, alongside that work at Best Connection, I carried on working in the journalism sort of field, which was for my local football team, Hensford Town. And I volunteered for, ended up being 7 years, would you believe, doing their match reports and interviewing the managers, and basically turning what was my hobby into a sort of a paid job. But it was, you know, it wasn't a bad thing to be able to go, you know, and represent the club. But that kept my sort of eye in, I suppose, in terms of what I wanted to do for my, you know, my long-term career. And I suppose off the back of that, I made a move into Birmingham and into IT recruitment, and carried on that, you know, that work with Hensford Town. And then, 2.5 years down the line, a job came up at Birmingham City. We touched upon earlier, and it was a sales role. So my sales experience at Best Connection, that I've moved on through into Network IT, my other sort of recruitment firm. That was one part of the role, but being able to go into a football club and talk football and talk events and all that sort of thing just made real sense. And you know, and I had a great 5.5 years at Blues, and you know, realistically, as a young 20-something, to work for the football club that your granddad and your brother and your dad have supported all their lives was a pretty good opportunity.
That's goosebump moments for me. I've got goosebumps on the back of my neck now. You saying that? That's like a dream, isn't it?
Yeah. And that all did stem from, if I hadn't have taken the role in the recruitment at Best Connection and hadn't gone through that sales sort of process, I wouldn't have had those transferable skills. And yeah, again, yeah, it's a stressful situation, a stressful environment at times with the standard of Birmingham City. But we had some amazing times with there, and then it grew as a role, and that was through hard work. But having that sales experience was a really, really good thing, and then that sort of I suppose fed through into my engagement with the Chamber of Commerce, which then got me the role at the Chamber. So it all sort of it all ties in.
Your formal role, what's your formal title now?
So I head up Senior Relationship Manager and Business Development Manager for the Chamber, covering Lichfield and Tamworth and stuff.
That is a mouthful.
Basically, I head up the sort of division, and I'm the local representative for the Greater Birmingham Chambers, but with direct engagement in Tamworth.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
So picking up again on your on the voluntary stuff, because I think that's a really important part, and I think that's an important part when we're in a market at the moment which is going to be candidate rich. There's going to be a lot of applicants for various jobs. I know certainly within our sectors at the moment we're seeing between 200 to 450 applicants per job, and these are engineering roles, operational management roles. There's some seriously skilled roles that are out there, and some seriously skilled people that are applying, and it's hard when you're a graduate and you are thinking, well, I don't have that wealth of experience. I think volunteering and gaining that level of experience really does help when you and I have both considered CVs and applications, and it's not about the wealth of experience that somebody has got. It's about how they're positioned and how they, obviously once you speak to them, how they come across. But that appetite to want to work and learn and develop is so key, isn't it? And you can't buy, when you're going to pay somebody to do a job, there's a skill element there, but you can't buy an attitude, can you? That's what's ingrained in somebody, of that will to do something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, coming out of university, and I'm sure it'll be the same for many graduates, it's sort of looking at what you enjoy and what skills you've learned from university. And if you can't get a job in it, volunteer in that area, and it'll, it won't do any harm, and it certainly won't harm your prospects when you're building your CV and building your experience. And again, it all depends on your current sort of financial situation, in terms of how and where you could volunteer, or how and where you can get involved. And I think it's really having the confidence in your ability that you've learned at university or at college or through apprenticeships, that you can offer something, and naturally people will usually accept help if it's offered, and then you make sure that you really make the most of that opportunity. And it also grows you as a person, because yes, you're giving your time up for free, or in my case, I was lucky enough to end up getting paid to do some of the match reports, so it sort of paid for my Saturday afternoon out at the football. But you still had kicks, and people still expected things from you. And I'll always remember our manager at the time. I wrote a match report that perhaps wasn't as positive as it could have been, and he wasn't very happy, and I had to deal with that. And at 23, 24, that grows. That's for someone you sort of respect to not call you out, that's the wrong word, but to appraise you in a way that isn't always positive helps as well. And I think that really did grow, help me grow as a person in my career, I suppose, as well. So yeah.
Brilliant. So top tips. We've talked about the volunteering side of things. What other tips do you think you could give to graduates?
Yeah, I think it is that volunteer, look at what you want to do. And again, not everyone is lucky enough necessarily to work in a job that involves doing something they really enjoy. But if you can, look at a career that you enjoy. If it's not the career that you want, you've trained for, and if you can pick up skills doing that, then that's really important. But yeah, certainly, treat the volunteering side of things, whether it's an hour a week or 10 hours a week, as a really good way to build your CV and grow grow you as a person, and like we mentioned at the start, something like Future Faces. If you're in a role, if you're in a position, get to know people who are your peers, and get to know those people that will eventually become your workmates or your fellow employees, and really use that time. And I know it's hard when you're in your 20s, because there's lots of other things happening, but just giving that little bit of time, I think, really helps. Helps.
And maybe we should mention sort of the networking side and how you can still network. LinkedIn's a great thing. Chamber are very full on LinkedIn, and they're doing lots of things with posts, and you can follow companies and members and see what's happening within that world, and connect with people. So even if you don't have the history of work experience, there's nothing stopping you getting on LinkedIn and networking and connecting with people. Is there?
Yeah, and never be afraid to approach people who you see, as your where they are perhaps in 10 years, where you want to be. Ask them, because they will have been in a similar position to yourself, and not everyone will necessarily get back to you, but people will, and you only need a couple of those contacts to come for you in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, or 10 years. But it's amazing who you get to know through that period, and who you then you realise have got some good. You've built up those networks from an early age, and I think that's really, really important. Again, going back to the Best Connection link, my mentor Lee, ended up being one of our clients at the Blues when he was buying hospitality. So in 10 years, over a 10-year period, he ended up work closely with him and a group of his friends for a few hospitality bookings over the years. So you never know where those connections
you never know. They always say, don't they, look at your friends, look at your relatives. Absolutely. And you can see your connections there coming through. So to sum up, obviously it is only temporary. We all know this is going to be really tough for people coming out in this year, but it is only temporary. We've heard from Chris, who's taken his career from wanting to be a journalist, going into recruitment and sales, working for his dream club, the Blues, don't hold that against him, and now into a membership director role. So really transported that role through. Make sure that you're connecting. Apologies, my dog is going for a third time, but I'm not stopping the interview this time. So go for volunteering. Use LinkedIn to connect with people, businesses that you want to work for, people that you admire. People will be friendly and will want to help you. Finally, thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for agreeing to be interviewed. Apologies for the interruptions with the dog and any other information that you might have, or any other noises you could have heard from me. I think we might have had the ice cream van, but they are the joys of working from home, and what we're all adapting to at the moment. But Chris, thank you so much. And I'll get my teeth in. I've got so many things that are going off at the moment. We do have a Be Career Confidence series going off as well via our Crowdcast. But No Wrong Path will continue throughout July and August, and who knows, even into September. But Chris, thanks for being our first one.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks, Ruth.
Thank you.